I'm not talking about anything yet. Please keep double tapping and liking because that helps in this TikTok world. All right, so I'm going live everywhere. Here we go. This is what my client with their 3-year-old picky eater told me today in our call. So the first thing that happened was we get on our call, and it turns out that she's quite restrictive in what she eats and what she doesn't eat, and she's very strong-minded in the sense that if she sees through her parents will suggest something to her, and she very much sees through it, and that's where we're at. Dad often will say things like, on the calls with me, he'll say, this is our second call, by the way, we've only just started working together, and Dad will say things like, oh, you know, she totally sees through me, she knows what I'm trying to do, she's not gonna, she doesn't take the bait, she sees it, she sees through it. And I say, okay, here's what we're gonna try. She doesn't eat meat, and she doesn't eat a lot of vegetables. So what we're working on at the moment are meat and vegetables. And they bought this new kind of meat. And I suggested a way that they can talk to her about how do they go about talking about this new kind of meat. It was ostrich meat. How are they going to talk about ostrich meat to their child? Because Dad was like, she's not going to eat it. And Mum also kind of said, I don't think she's going to eat it. And I said, okay, let's just release this want for her to eat it, because there's a good chance she won't eat it. So let's just embrace that, and let's focus on the process of helping her be interested in it. So we came up with a few ideas of how do we engage her with this. And I actually bought a whiteboard. I bought a whiteboard, and I've got it with me. So I'm gonna draw it. Just wait for me for a second. Okay, so here's my whiteboard. I need one of the ones my daughter asked me. She's like, do you have one of the big ones that you can like hold and turn around? And I said, no, I don't. Like, that turns itself around. I do not. So the way I help clients, and the method that I want to talk about is connected meal times, right? So if we're only utilizing our meal times, if this here is meals, and we're talking to our children at meal times about food, if we're only utilizing this time to talk about food, we are absolutely, it's not bad, but we can do so much more. So the next layer here is prep time, getting kids involved in the preparation of the meals. Really great, really important, really helpful. I was on a call this morning with a discovery call with a parent, two parents. They've got a 3-year-old as well, actually, 3.5 years old. And Mum said, like, he's happy to help in the kitchen, and there was definitely a period where when we started getting him to help, he was much more open to trying the foods. But then that's kind of fizzled out and died, which is not great, and he's very restricted in his eating. So if we're utilizing prep time, that's great. Now, there's another layer here in this connected meal times where we can talk about food outside completely of meal times. And this could be in the car, this could be on a walk, anywhere that is outside of meal times, where there is absolutely zero pressure or there's nothing. There's no pressure, there's no expectation. So at meals, there is both an expectation and there is almost always pressure. Every parent that I've ever worked with has had some form of pressure left over. They say, like, oh, I've removed the big things of pressure. Like, I'm not forcing them to eat and I'm not asking them to try a bite, which is great. But there are still a lot of other things that are underlying and ongoing that are still pressure. So, for example, the client that I'm working with at the moment, they were telling me a little bit about their meals, and they would say things like, oh, you know, insert whatever food helps you grow up to be big and strong. And that in itself is pressure, because a child is going to hear that and think, oh, am I not going to grow up big and strong if I don't eat that, but I don't want to eat that? Or some children have a genuine fear of eating that. Like, I work with kids that are extreme picky eaters where there is fear about eating that food, which is, we don't want to scare children into eating things. And especially if a child If we're going past the like moderate level picky eating to an extreme picky eater, what we're doing here is we've got a child who is literally afraid to try the food, being told if they don't eat that food, they're not going to grow up big and strong. They're going to internalize that and feel worry and guilt and shame and not want to come to the table because mealtimes are not enjoyable for them. No one wants to be told that they're going to be sick or unhealthy or unwell if they don't eat the certain food. Okay, so we're talking about how do we utilize these two areas to talk about food and exposures, have exposures to food away from meal times and the table. Okay, so I've used my whiteboard for the first time. Hooray! So in the discovery call that I had today, it was really interesting. The parents had filled out the form. They just bought my online course. It was actually the dad who booked the call, which is I think the first time I've ever had the dad book a call and fill out the form and everything. And mum and dad were both on the call, and he said, I found you on TikTok a little while ago, and things just got so bad with our 3-year-old that I went and bought your online course. And when he filled out the application for the discovery call, he said, look, I'm not interested in coaching. I just want some more ideas. It was you. Hi, Kevin. He said, I want some more ideas of what can I do to sort of stretch out what's going on in mealtimes without meltdowns, and how do I make that more, how do I translate that into my son trying more foods? So in this conversation that we had, so a discovery call is where we get the chance to sit down and I get to really understand what is going on in your meal times. It's not a coaching call. It's where I will ask you questions about what's going on at your meal times, I'll sometimes ask more about like what foods your child is eating. One of the questions that I asked Kevin and his wife was, how many foods does your child have approximately? And the answer was it used to be 20 and now it's closer to 10. So my next question was, is this 10 foods or 10 meals? Because if we're talking about a meal, it might be, the first thing that comes to my head is like Spanish rice, which has rice and it usually has a couple of different vegetables in it, and it might have a meat in it as well. So we've already got a couple of foods in there, where if it's one food, like they eat yogurt or they eat cheese, the yogurt and the cheese, those are 2 foods. So when the answer was 10 foods, the first thing that comes into my head is, look, even 20 foods is considered a red flag. And I said to Kevin, since he's here, I asked, it's unlikely there's going to be a lot of variety because 10 foods is very limited already. But are we talking about there being something from every food group here? And the answer was no, which is kind of what I expected because 10 foods is very limited. And so when I'm talking to somebody, yes, the less than 20 foods is like a big red flag. But let's say we are talking 18 foods. Is the kid eating something from every food group? Usually the answer is no. And the reason for that is because just like my client that I mentioned before, who also has a 3-year-old, she really gravitates towards like starchy foods. And so we're working on veggies and meat because she really doesn't eat much from the meat category. And so in the same thing with this discovery call, we're talking about, all right, the diet itself is very limited, less than 10 foods. That's a really major red flag, and not from all the food groups. So, if fruits were missing in this case, we need to figure out not only what's going on behind the scenes for this little boy, but also how can the parents change the way that they're approaching things. And these parents were wonderful. They were clearly very in tune with what their son needed from them and what they wanted to do, and also very introspective because mum said something. She said that her son was born very small and he's continued to be very small. So when he started to become picky, which was been going on for over a year at this point, close to a year and a half, when he started to get picky, that's when mum was saying, I started to take that really personally. I was putting a lot of time and effort into this, and when he was throwing the food or wasn't eating it, I was taking that personally. So mum then said she was able to disconnect that taking it personally, which is a really big step, and it's really hard. It seems like really easy, but when you're a parent and your child, you show love through food, and I've actually got a module about this in the course as well. Anyway, so I digress. When we were talking in the call, I said, look, I'm going to be very honest with you, as I always want to be honest. Whether somebody on the call wants to work with me or not, it's not my job to, I'm not there to pressure you into working with me. What I do want you to walk away with is a sense of how problematic is the other problems that you're having. And a child who's only eating 10 foods and not a variety, that is problematic. And so I was very open and upfront about that. And I said, look, is it all right if I tell you a little bit about the group? Because I do have a small coaching group that I run every couple of months. Right now, we're in week 4 of my current group, and I've got another group that starts in August. And I said, look, I want to be really upfront with you. I think it's great that you've gotten started on the online course, because at the moment that would be I wouldn't recommend one-on-one right now. I've got a wait list for that as well. So this getting started on the course now, and if the group is something you're interested in, let me tell you a little bit about that. And so they asked me to elaborate on that. I said, look, I'm happy to tell you about it. There's no pressure to sign up. There's never any pressure. It's completely your decision. And financially speaking, there's always something to think about there, because not only is coaching an investment in financially, it's also a time investment. And if, like, I've had clients that have said, oh, I do want to do the group, but I'm also going to be traveling for a month of that 8-week program. I said, well, you know what? If you're not going to have access to, a kitchen, and you're not really going to be in your natural space, if it's not really something you're going to be able to work on with your child, it's probably not going to be the best use of your money at this time. And you're probably best joining the next group. For anyone else, if you've got the time to put into it now, which over the summertime, in the US, this is the time to do it, because your kid is home more and you're able to put more time in it as well. Cecilia, I see your question. I promise I'll come right back and respond to it. Oh, Kevin said we got the email and we're going to be signing up. Beautiful. There is an early bird special, because the group does start next month. So when you do sign up, you'll get access to the online course, Mealtimes Without Meltdowns. Kevin already has access to it because he bought the course. So the online course that I have, Mealtimes Without Meltdowns, that is available. The link is in my bio. It's called Mealtimes Without Meltdowns. I've got a couple of other courses as well. If you're here and you're looking at preventing picky eating, I've got a baby course, which is for 0 to 12 months of age, called Fuss-Free First Foods. And I've also got a course about sweets. If your child loves sweets, chances are that might be going hand in hand with some picky eating. So that bundle would be a good one to utilize. If you feel like you need more support. So in this case, if Kevin had been on the call with me today and he'd sort of said, oh, we've implemented things, and he's making really great progress, and he's starting to eat more things, and we're feeling really at ease with this, I would say, okay, well, it sounds like you probably don't need to do the group. And what I would recommend is I would tell you about the group, and I'd be like, look, keep an eye on things, because if you're not noticing improvements in the next 4 to 6 weeks, that's when I would either reach out to you or you reach out to me and let me know, because these changes, they shouldn't take a huge length of time to see progress. So yes, some kids take longer with progress. 2 of my clients in my last group, they had more extreme cases of picky eating. Whereas normally in the group, I recommend moderate cases of picky eaters, because the group is 8 weeks. It's very fast. We cover a lot in a short period of time. And so we got to week 6 of the group, and I was kind of like, oh, I wonder, a couple of these kids are still pretty staunchly not trying things, which at that point, 6 weeks in, usually almost always we've got kids trying things and being more open to things. So by week 6, I was kind of like, all right, we need to figure out what exactly is going on here. But in week 6, both of those kiddos had a turnaround where they were showing their growth, not only by being more open and willing to accept things either on their plate or trying them, but also in the language and the way they were communicating back to their parents. Because a lot of what we talk about, so when I showed you this, this here is all about communication. This is not about, when I say exposures, we're not just talking about I'm giving my kid a piece of broccoli to try at these times. No, we're talking about the foods at these times. We're talking about the broccoli. We're talking about the Spanish rice. We're talking about the ostrich. We are talking about all these things. So much about feeding, In my practice, I work very much in this gray area of I'm not giving you a meal plan. That is not going to help you. You know that you need to you know that you want your child to eat chia seeds and fruit and this and that. That's not what you need me for. What you need me for is how do you get your child to eat those things, to want to eat those things? It's not about, I really like to remove the word get. We're not trying to get the child to do something. We are trying to help the child want to do that. We are trying to help the child want to try the ostrich. We're trying to help the child want to try the blueberries. That's what our job is. If you're thinking, how do I get? Remove the get. It's not about getting them, because when you say I want to get them to do something, we're setting up this power struggle. We're pulling a rope with our child, like a tug of war. That's not what we want to do. We are there to help our child. And you know what's really interesting is this is language that I also use in my home. I have 2 children, and to reframe a meltdown, very much, I am there to help my child through the meltdown. I'm not there to get them to get through it. I'm not there to get them to stop and to get them to stop yelling and to get them to stop shrieking, although the shrieking is really difficult. I will sit with the one child that's not having a meltdown. I'll say, I was reading a book to my 4.5-year-old the other day while my 7-year-old was having a meltdown. And I had been there to help her through it, and it wasn't helping. And I said, I'm going to go over here. I'm going to read the other one a book. And we sat on the couch. And I said, you're welcome to come and sit with us. And then after a few minutes, she started to go and do something she wasn't supposed to do. And I turned to my little one and I said, I'm going to go and help your sister, because I'm not there to stop her. I'm not there to make it stop and go away. I'm there to help. And it's the same with food. We're not there to get them to do it. We're there to help them want to do it. Because if we're looking at a 3-year-old or a 5-year-old or a 7-year-old or a 10-year-old, we see in the moment we want them to eat the broccoli. We know why it's important. We want them to eat it. But if we do this we get them to do it, okay, you've got your child to eat the broccoli. But what we ultimately want is to have a 20-year-old, 17-year-old, a 25-year-old who goes out in the world and makes their own choices to eat broccoli because they want to, and not because their parents made them do it. The more you make your child do something, the less they're going to want to do it. So ultimately, the reason we want them to eat the broccoli is so that they can be healthy and all the things, go to the toilet, poop, all those sorts of things. But we also want that in the long term. We want our child to be able to go out into the world and be successful and eat vegetables because they want to. So the only way we're going to be able to help them do that is the way we facilitate our exposures is so important. It's not enough to just put the food on the plate. I love every time I get on a call and I have a parent say, I've started exposing them again. That was the discovery call today. I've started exposing them again. That's beautiful. It's brilliant and it's wonderful. If you've been making separate meals and now you're starting to put your own food on your child's plate, that is absolutely beautiful and wonderful. It is an excellent place to start. You can't stop there though. If you stop at the time that you've put the food on the plate and you don't do anything else, there's a small chance that they will try the food. They are being exposed to it, and that's beautiful. Like, you can tick that off. That's absolutely something that you can control. Wonderful and beautiful. Where you're leaving a lot on the table by not continuing the conversation with them or doing this. You're like at meals, right? You're only doing this meals. I've put the food on the plate and I'm exposing them to it. Okay, great. That is beautiful. It's a great place to start. There's all these other areas that we can work with the child as well to help them want to try the food. Okay, I'm going to stop rambling now and have a look. I saw there were a couple of comments. Let me swipe over here so I can read them a little bit easier. Kevin, that's what I'm wanting. I know it will click for my son, but right now it's not clicking, and all my bag of tricks is the bag of tricks runs out. And honestly, these tools over the period of 8 weeks, the first few weeks are really heavy in the tools, because during the 8 weeks we're not only working on swapping out what you're doing, we're making these habits so that they start to come naturally. Like, one of the things that we work on in the group that I was actually working on with my other client today with the 3.5-year-old is, how do we talk to them in a way that they're going to listen? Because I've had clients whose children will literally put their hands over their mouth, be like, no, I don't want to hear I don't want to hear you talking about food. So we need to talk, we need to communicate with the kids in a way that they're going to listen. And one of the beautiful ways that we can do that is by being silly. And so when you get on a call with me and we're like actually on a counseling call, I will act out the situation with you and I will show you exactly how, when you're interacting with your child, this is how it's going to sound, because that's what's going to get your child interested. That's what's going to catch your child a little bit unawares, which is kind of what we want, to really help them get into the exposure that we are creating for them. So what happens if they freak out when you put it onto their plate? That's a sign of food anxiety, where if your child is so freaked out that it's on their plate, it's not always, but often in my experience, it's because a child has been forced to try something before, and the idea of it being on their plate freaks them out because they don't want to have to try it. Lady Bacon, you tell me if that sounds familiar. My son refuses to try anything new. He's eaten the same five foods for his entire life. He's 3 now. Kayla, is that true as well for when he was weaning, that he would only eat the 5 foods? And what would happen if you would put other things on his plate? Feeding therapy hasn't helped. I have a lot of questions about feeding therapy, because I've had a lot of mixed experiences with it. Like, I know some feeding therapists and they're great. I've also heard of some from clients that I've worked with in the past where they've still pressured the child to eat or lick or touch something when they haven't wanted to, which can make it worse for the child. The other thing about feeding therapy, it's helpful in certain situations, but because the therapist works directly with your child, they're not really giving you any tools that you take away and implement with the kids. When we work together, I don't work with your child. I work with you. I'm training the trainer. I'm training you. You're the parent. You're the one that has the rapport with the kid. They're not going to listen to me. I'm a stranger. So building the rapport is, I don't want to say it's a waste of time, but it's better for you to utilize that because you're the one that sees them every day. You're the one that knows them. I don't. So when we work together, one of the benefits of us working together, and it's directly you and I, and hopefully your spouse as well, which is what's going to really help you, because I'm training you on how to communicate with your child. Sorry, I had one of your comments got blocked, so I've unblocked it. Feeding therapy was a joke for us. Well, I'm really sorry that was the experience that you had. My son is 5 and I'm worried we waited too long to help him. I'm going to say that you absolutely haven't waited too long to help him. I'm working with a client right now who has, her oldest child is 14 and she's got 2 others that are tweens. And generally I would say I work with kiddos under 10, but it's very common that they cluster between the 4 and 6-year-old mark. I'm working with a 7-year-old at the moment who it was extremely rigid when we started working together. We're in month 4 at the moment of our work together, and she ate no vegetables except one sauce that had vegetables in it, and that was the only mixed dish she would eat 4 months ago. And her mum sent me a message last week in our private chat that when they went out for dinner, she ordered a side of carrots and celery and ate them. I was shocked, and it's taken time. Like, I want you to be aware, and I tell this to everybody that I work with, you're not at the end of the 8 weeks. If we work together in the 8-week program, you're not done after 8 weeks. Absolutely not. Like, don't think that you're done and don't think everything's fixed. It's not. These tools are what you take forth as you go out and continue with your feeding journey. It doesn't end. It's like taking a course to help you with meltdowns. Meltdowns don't go away just because you know how to handle them. Food issues don't, like, picky eating doesn't go away just because you know how to handle it. It goes away because you know how to handle it and you continue to use those tools. So like anybody that's thinking of, working together or anything like that, I want you to absolutely know that this is an ongoing process, just like a meltdown. It's not going to stop just because you know how to handle it. When he was weaning, he ate a few more foods, but dropped those foods and only has safe foods now. Kayla, I'm going to encourage you to book a call with me so that we can chat in more detail, because I'm wondering if there's something more underlying going on, because it's pretty normal that kiddos, when they're babies, will eat a variety of everything. So I have more questions as to how you kind of got to the place where you are now, you can book a discovery call. Go to the link in my bio, tap the 3 lines in the top right hand corner, go to work with me, and you can book a discovery call right from there. It'll take you right to my calendar. That's what I'd recommend. I don't know why my DD5 is so reluctant. I try really hard to keep zero pressure situation. Chelsea, tell me a little bit about that. What happens when you put a food on their plate that they don't want? Yeah, I mean that kiddo who ordered the carrot sticks and celery, like it is huge. Like it's huge. I would love to find something to eat at a restaurant besides mac and cheese. And I can absolutely tell, like, there are so many parents that I work with. One of my clients from the last group that I was talking about, who had one of the more extreme cases, they ate at a restaurant for the first time in like a year and a half with their daughter. She's only 3 years old, very restricted, but they ate at a restaurant. This was a huge deal for them. And this girl also ate an egg custard, even though she screams that she hates eggs. She had tried a lot, like quite a number of new things, including some vegetables before the end of the group. And it's like, doesn't matter when you begin your journey here. What matters is, okay, I've got a 7-year-old. This is like the client whose kid ate the veggie sticks at the restaurant. What was important there is when they showed up to work with me, they're like, you know what? That's happened in the past. What matters now is what are we doing from now on? That's what matters. Okay. I'm working really hard to keep up with comments. A comment on Instagram. My daughter is 2 years old and is going through feeding therapy since 1. Started solids at 18 months. 18 months is very late to start solids. So I've got questions about, was there an underlying situation that prevented you from starting solids earlier? Generally, you want to start, the signs of readiness generally appear around 6 months old. She's capable of finger foods but doesn't want to eat. If you're still on the live, feel free to send me a private message. If any of you want to chat to me more, if you don't want to book a call yet, just send me a private message. Let me know that you came from the live. That sounds like quite a specific situation, and I have a lot more questions. Would you be able to help out? We did baby-led weaning at 6 months, still never ate solids. So yes, send me a message or go directly and book a call. Was there anything underlying, like in terms of like a swallowing issue, or something like that? Because that's really extreme. Oh, good, you're still on the live. My 4-year-old always requests a bedtime snack and will keep asking for more to avoid actually going to bed, and this leaves him with a bellyache. How do I cut him off without having to feel restricted? My daughter is 7. Apples, avocados, bananas, and mostly the only fresh are the only fresh fruits and veggies she wants. So she's eating okay, so those are 2 different food groups, but that's not a lot of variety if it's only 1 or 2 vegetables. Doctor says she's good several times, but I'm worried. Okay, let's talk about doctors for a second, because this came up on the discovery call today with Kevin, and the doctor said, oh, he's on his growth curve, you don't have to worry about it. This is a bitch please moment where it's not okay. It's not okay for a doctor to dismiss your concerns about your child's eating. Doctors are not dietitians. They're not specialized feeding therapists. They're not specialized in what's normal for picky eaters. And I cannot tell you, this really gets me fired up. I cannot tell you how many parents I've been on calls with who have said, oh yeah, my doctor's not worried about it. Dude, your child's eating 6 foods or 7, 10, 15, 20 foods. That's a problem. That's a concern. That's a concern without a doubt. And I'm not saying that to you because I want you to be scared or worried. I want you to know that it's a problem. If you only have 1 child, you might not know that it's a problem. Sometimes it's not until you have a second kid who eats everything that you're like, why is my first child not eating things? Is it supposed to be this hard? It's not supposed to be this hard. It's not normal for children to eat less than 20 foods. It's not normal. And why I'm telling you this is I'm really sorry if you've been dismissed by a doctor. The worst problem is that if a doctor is like the most authoritative person in your child's life, right? If your doctor tells you not to worry, you're not going to worry. But it's not normal that you're struggling this much at a meal. Kevin said it made us feel like it just takes time, and in reality we have to work. Yeah, absolutely. So Kevin had told me on the call that the doctor said that your kid will just grow out of it. Well, their child is 3.5. He's been picky for a year and a half. He's 3.5. He's been picky for a year and a half, and he's been eating solid foods for a year and a half. Well, sorry, for 3 years, but half of his eating life, he's been really selective. That's a huge percentage of the child's life. That's a problem. That's not normal behavior. So I had someone on a TikTok live a while ago say, like, my child's only wanting to drink milk. And they said it's been going on for 2.5 weeks, but before that they would eat everything. That is so extreme. That is such an extreme shift in a child's eating. So I'm just thinking, when I read that, I was like, okay, let me think about this with my children. My children eat pretty much everything. The little one is a bit more selective. If they just went from eating everything to only wanting to drink milk, in a day, I'd be concerned. I wouldn't be waiting weeks. I'd be like, what the fuck? Like, what's going on now? This is a huge shift. So if you see shifts in your child's eating, like dramatic ones, like that's very dramatic. But even if it's starting slowly and they're slowly decreasing foods, that's not normal. That's something that you want to get on top of, because that tends to create a lot of inward stress. Like, why is my child not doing that? Now I need to think about, what am I going to make them so that they'll eat something, because I want them to eat. I don't want them to go hungry. So I wanted to get back to that question on Instagram about how to cut off the child who is trying not to go to bed. It's a pretty simple answer. It is, but it's also not. If your child is stalling, you need to... Okay, let's take it back further. You need a schedule. If you don't have a meal and snack schedule, it's also part of my online course, but I do have a free tutorial on YouTube, which is Family Snack Nutritionist on YouTube. It's one of the top 5 videos that will show up right when you go to the page about how to create a mealtime schedule that works for your family. Generally speaking, most kids don't need a bedtime snack. It really depends on what time they're eating dinner and what time they're going to bed. If there's like 3 hours between dinner and bedtime, yeah, they might need a snack. But generally speaking, I'll give you my schedule, for example. We start dinner around 5:30 and my kiddos go to bed around 7. So there is no space to have a bedtime snack in there. There's no need to have a bedtime snack. If I'm giving a bedtime snack, I'm basically saying, don't worry about eating your dinner, because there's going to be a snack right after. Not necessary, not needed, don't do it. So that's the first part about how to answer that question. If you've got an older child, so I'm in this space where my 7-year-old, we start bedtime at 7, but then she has some time to play in her room and she's usually asleep by 8. So if dinner's finishing around 6:15, she still is not at the point where she needs a snack before bed. You don't want them to be eating right before they go to bed. That's something else to think about. But I'm not looking forward to this when it happens, but if she starts going to bed later at like 9, which hopefully doesn't happen, I would wait and see if the hunger becomes an issue. Because if it doesn't become an issue, there's no need to put a snack there. My kids eat, again, I'm just going off my schedule. If I was working with you, I'd be looking at your schedule. My kids eat consistently throughout the day, 3 meals, 2 snacks. They have ample opportunities to eat. A snack isn't necessary before bed. But if you've got a picky eater and your child's not eating very much throughout the day, and they are hungry at nighttime, this could be a time that we can utilize the bedtime snack, depending on your schedule. It's sometimes helpful, it's sometimes not. It's really dependent on your situation, and that would be something that we would work on together if it's necessary. I pronounce my name Talia. How do you pronounce your name? I can see that your H is in a different spot. Do you give seconds of safe food? My son pretty much eats safe foods. Okay, that's a loaded question. It depends. So I can give an example of the call that I was on today with my one-on-one client. They told me about what they had for dinner and what the safe or reliable foods were for the child. And it depends what it is. First of all, you don't want to be serving separate meals, which is something that we work on in like the first couple of weeks when we work together. By the way, if, as we've been talking through this, if the group coaching program sounds like something that you're interested in, send me a DM. I do, in the month of July, because it's still early, I've got an early bird special for anybody who registers in the month of July. So send me a message and say, hey, I'm interested in the group, and I'll send you the code and the link for it. The link is not on my website for the group, so it's via DM only. So just send me a private message if you're interested in the group. So if your child is only eating the safe foods, it sort of depends on the situation. So for example, let's say you're having, I'm just kind of picking examples from clients throughout the week. Let's say you're having curry for dinner and your child is very unlikely to eat the curry, and then you have a side of like fruit salad and yogurt, and that's their safe food, and they're refusing to eat the curry. That's up to them. The side dishes, the fruit salad and yogurt, are for everybody to eat. So it's fine for them to have seconds, but also we need to make sure that everybody else in the family is getting to eat the fruit salad and the yogurt. And when it runs out, it's kind of run out. So you want to plan for your child to be able to have some, but not necessarily enough to completely fill up. We're not going to give them a whole meal of fruit salad and yogurt. It's okay for them to still feel a little bit hungry and to offer them the other food, because when the other stuff runs out, it's run out. I had a client whose child would like eat bottomless amounts of garlic bread, like cheesy garlic bread. And I asked the parents, like, how much do you make for him or for all of you? And they'll say, I think that, I'm trying to remember, this was a few years ago. He would eat the servings of everybody in the family if he was allowed to. And I said, well, we need to be respectful here of you, in that you also want the cheesy garlic bread. So it's okay to say, okay, I'm going to warm up. It depends how big the pieces are, right? If I'm just going off of a regular slice of garlic bread, right? But that big, you might say, okay, 2 slices is reasonable for each person. That's what I'm going to heat up for each person. And you could potentially share one of your pieces with the child if they asked for more. But once they've run out of it, like it's run out, and you let them know that ahead of time. Everybody's got 2 pieces. That way they don't gobble up the 2 pieces and then they're like, oh my God, I want more, and there's no more. And this is a surprise to me. We don't want it to be a big surprise. So I hope that answers your question. I feel like we've been doing everything wrong. We cater to what he's going to eat. Okay, you're not alone. I will say that that's exactly, in the discovery call I was on today, that's what mum and dad told me as well, because they desperately wanted the child to eat. And so I want you to remember that no one teaches us how to do this. And lots of children go through a stage where they want autonomy and they want to say no to things. And we as parents are not really, especially when it comes to food, because there's a lot of guilt and there's a lot of like, you feed your baby and now they're a toddler and you still have to feed them and you have to make them eat, because if they don't eat, what am I going to do? So I want anybody who's feeling guilty about this to release the guilt about, okay, I've done it wrong, or this wasn't the best way to do it. You did the best that you could with what you knew at the time and what you thought you were doing right. Like, you were feeding your child, and fed is best, right? Yes, it is. Absolutely. No one wants, like, it's never a good, we're never trying to starve a child into eating something. That is never going to work for anybody. I've got a highlight on Starve It Out and why you should never do that on my Instagram page. Never do that. Remember, what matters now is, okay, I now know that perhaps the way I was doing it might not have been the best way to help my child, and catering to them makes it worse. So I'm going to go ahead and figure out what I can do that is better. There's more than one way to skin a cat, and in the same way that there's lots of right ways to feed your child. So try to let go of what you've done in the past that may not have been the best way of doing it, and focus on, okay, this is what I'm going to try to do now. I saw I had some Instagram questions come in. If you're on Instagram and have a question, could you tap the bubble with the question mark? It's a lot easier for me to find the question. At the moment, I'm just scrolling back. Thank you. She gets pretty well. Beans, nuts. She eats pretty well. Beans, nuts, dairy, bread. Definitely more than 20 foods, but picky with fruits and vegetables. She'll nibble berries occasionally. Okay, I mean, honestly, from what you're saying, it sounds like the picky eating is moderate, which is great, which means that you're most likely a really good candidate for the online course. I have had clients that they'll show up to a discovery call, and the issues that they're having are so deeply entrenched. Like the client that I was telling you about that has the 7-year-old who wasn't eating any vegetables and then ordered the carrot sticks and celery recently. This is after 4 months of working one-on-one with me, by the way. This doesn't happen overnight. Don't expect that. Not possible. When we met for our discovery call, I did tell her, I said, you're going to need much more input than just 8 weeks. That's not going to get you where you need to be and where you want to be. And if we're on a call, it might not be what you want to hear, but I'm going to give you the information that you need to be successful. If I don't think you're going to be successful in the group, I'm not going to suggest you join the group, because in some cases I've had parents show up to a call and they'll tell me all the things that they've done, and oftentimes parents really have tried a lot of things, and many of the things that I recommend as well. It's sometimes the way they've gone about doing it, or it's sometimes the length of time they've spent doing it, or there are some things that need little tweaks what's going to make the difference to them. So yeah, like if you've got more questions, feel free to private message me about that. The rare occasion where my son does want to try something new, he gags before he's even tasted it. Is there does he have anything underlying going on, like sensory related? Sometimes when I have kiddos that are repeatedly gagging, it can be smell or a texture issue that we need to work on as well. My son hasn't tried anything new in years. Honestly, he's 5. Okay. So again, I'm going to say it doesn't feel great to say it, but it's not normal that a child doesn't want to try something for such a long time. It's okay if it's like one thing, like at one meal they decide they don't want to try the green beans. Okay. We want to look at those. How rigid is your child? And how long has it been that way? So it's like the example I gave earlier. If your child's gone from eating everything to only wanting to eat milk, like that's huge. That's a huge shift. And if we're talking about a child not wanting to try anything new for years, that's also not normal, and something that your child needs help. It's not that there's something wrong with your child, and it's not only that your child needs help. Honestly, I'll be very frank here, and probably an unpopular opinion, but most of the work that we do is on the way you communicate with your kids. There's nothing wrong with your child. Even kids that are neurodiverse or like have textural issues or sensory issues, they're not broken. There's nothing wrong with them. It's the way that you go about approaching the food with them. You can do that in a different way that is a better way. And that's what I train you to do with your child. Sensory issues seem to be only a problem with foods. Okay. Which is both a good thing and a bad thing. It's a good thing because it's great that it's not, like if it's actual like sensory processing disorder, it's well beyond food. It's like textures of clothes, it's a lot of other things, noises, it's a lot more things than just food. The good news is if it's just food, is I'm pretty confident we can overcome that. For example, I had a kid that I worked with. He was in one of my early groups. I think he was 3, and he would often gag at new things and the reason that happens, not always, but one of the most common reasons I see that kids are gagging, same as when the child is like running away from the table, it's because the child has been forced or coerced or strongly recommended to try something by the parent, and there's a level of anxiety there, and that's how it manifests with gagging. So I had one child where they made like a yogurt dip together. The yogurt dip was on the table, and when he saw it, he did want to try it, and he gagged and threw up. And then in the next week, I said, okay, this is what you're going to do with the yogurt sauce this week, and let's give that a try. And not only was he able to, they made it together, and he was able to eat it and try and like actually not just try it, he was able to eat it, which he wanted to, without gagging and vomiting. So there's always a reason for that. And once we've identified the reason, that's when we can say, okay, this is what we need to try. This is how we're going to approach this so that your child doesn't have that level of anxiety. And often the first few weeks of us working together are simply how do we remove the pressures that are there, because they are. Even the parents that have come to me and said we've removed all the pressure, I've still asked them some questions. There's always still some small level of pressure still there. Sometimes it's quite big and sometimes it's small, and sometimes it's that you just don't know that those, like some of the things that you say are pressure, like telling your kid they need to eat their green beans if they're going to grow up big and strong. Well, this has protein in it, which is going to help you do gymnastics or whatever. So there's a lot of very sneaky forms of pressure that are still usually there, or almost always there, with parents. So the first few weeks of us working together are simply peeling those back and removing them. All right, I've got to start to wrap up this live because I've got a meeting with somebody who's conducting some research at the University of Sydney about extreme picky eaters in kids that have ARFID. So I'm very excited for that. If you have questions or you're interested in learning more about the group, or you want to book a call with me, send me a private message and we'll set that up. Let me know that you came from the live. If you want to go straight to booking a call, go straight to my website and tap on work with me, book a call. And if you have questions before you want to book a call, or if you're like, no, I want to get right into this group and I want to have the early bird discount, send me a private message, let me know. And it's going to be wonderful. Kevin, I'm really looking forward to working with both of you as well. You're both really lovely parents. So yeah, feel free to send me a private message if you'd like about any of the programs. And I hope you all have a great day. And thanks for being here, and thanks for your questions. I will talk to you soon. Bye.